Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to today's Company Tax Planner support session. My name is Rizal van Jaarsveld, and I am the Business Development Manager for Taxbox. So some of you might have seen my name on some of the emails that you've been receiving or some of the queries that you've received. Good afternoon. Hello there. Welcome. So happy to see you, Louise. So I'm here to introduce the company and our software to new potential users and also to our current users, which we value very much. Hello there, hi Stan. So just to kick it off, I am going to be in the background today. We've got Rizal here, who is the brainchild or the mastermind behind the development of all our software, which we obviously evolve all the time. We're making enhancement to it all the time. We've got Gert Broden here as well for just some tax support if there's any tax questions relating to company tax. And we've got Matthew also working in the background, helping us with technical issues and technical support. Just to give you some insight on why we are presenting the support webinar, it's exactly what it says. Just as a value-added service to our valued clients and prospective new clients, this is just an extra service that we provide in helping you to understand how to seamlessly navigate through our software. So the Company Tax Planner obviously caters for the normal tax for companies, turnover tax for companies, as well as the companies that qualify for SPC rates. So it's not very complex. We know that the company tax is the easy one. So the software is going to be easy to work as well. We did schedule the webinar for 1 hour. I can assure you it's not going to be a full 1 hour. I mean, I can talk to you for the rest of the time, but yeah, we just wanted to make sure that we don't run out of time, but it's not going to be a long one. The last thing that I want to say before we kick it off is that we do have a new feature that we want to showcase for you today, and that is something that we've been working with DraftWorks. They will be putting an integration button on their DraftWorks software, whereby you'll be able to export your annual financial statements data to a CSV file, and then from the CSV file, you'll be able to import it into your Company Tax Planner software. That is great, eh? So Rizal, I'm going to hand it over to you. He will also be showing us that new feature today. So I hope you enjoy.
Thanks, Rizal, for that introduction. Okay, good afternoon. Welcome. I'm Rizal. As Rizal mentioned, I'm responsible for the software development at Taxbox, and that includes the Tax Planner range of products, and more specifically, the Company Tax Planner, which we'll be showcasing today. So yes, Company Tax has been a product of Taxbox for quite a number of years. However, the version or platform that we'll be showing you today has only been around for a couple of months. The powers that be had a different vision for what the company tax planning package should be, and reimagined the application into what it is now. So it is a young product, but with all our products, will be continually evolving. So just to start off, I thought I'd just run through a little overview of the session and the areas that we're wanting to touch on today. Okay. So the first thing that we'd like to show you is the installation process, where it all starts, and the process of activating tax years within the system. Users and running concurrent sessions, that is basically running multiple sessions of the application if you're on a network and you have multiple users. And then we'll jump into the Company Tax Planner functionality itself. We'll cover capturing the entities, the financials, the provisionals, and we'll go through a couple of the reports. I think thereafter we'll have a short break, and then we'll cross back to Rizal. And then thereafter, we'll have an interactive QA, so you'll be able to ask your questions, whatever it may be, and then we'll close after that. Okay, so I'm just going to jump right in. I'll start with the installation. Just see if I can get my screen up here. Okay, so when you purchase Company Taxplanner or you request a demo, you'll receive an email containing the download link for the downloader or the installer. If you've purchased a license, you'll also receive an email once your order is confirmed and marked as paid, and this email will contain an order number, which you will also need for the registration process. So once you've downloaded the installer, you'll have a file called co-taxplanner_setup.exe. Um, Before I go any further, there's a couple of things that I'd like to mention here. Depending on your machine's security settings, your download might be blocked, or it might flag the exe as a harmful exe. If I can just demo that quickly, let's go there. So I'm just going to simulate the Taxplanner download. So when you receive the email, there'll be a link in it, which you can then click on, which will open your browser and start the download as it is doing now. Once the download finishes, there's one of two things that can happen. It will allow the download through, or it'll tell you, or it'll ask you if you want to allow it through. It's flagged it as an exe, so it might be harmful to your computer, and then you'll have to click a few options to allow the download through to your machine. As soon as this is finished, I'll show you what that looks like. All right. Okay, so I'm using Microsoft Edge, and that's the message that comes up if I download any exe. So on the options button next to that download file, there's an option to say keep. So I click that option, it'll give me a second message. I'll just say keep anyway, and it'll then allow the downloads through your browser. And once the download successfully through your browser, you'll have a file called co-taxplanner_setup, and that will typically go and live in your downloads folder, depending on your settings, your browser settings. Okay. So once you've successfully managed to download the file, it's just a matter of double clicking on it. Okay, and then the first thing that the installer will ask you is, where do you want to install this? Now, the default is off your C drive under the FinSolve folder. If you have any other location you want to install it into, this would be the place where you'd specify that. I know some people, if they're installing on a server, they'll have a specific location for all their software. This would be the place where you'd specify that folder. Okay, that's fairly straightforward. Desktop shortcut, yes, please. And then the other option that you have here is to select whether it's a server that you're installing or whether it's a desktop. So if it's a desktop, you leave the server option off. If it's a server that you're installing, in other words, you're installing on a server that's going to serve multiple workstations, you check that flag. And what that flag does is, after the Taxplanner installation completes, it will install a few additional components which is required for the network access to the database. So Taxplanner uses Firebird as its backend, and for network access to that, there's a few additional components that's required to be installed. But this installs along with the Taxplanner installation if you mark this option. So just one thing to remember, if you are installing on a server, to select this option so that those additional components are installed. So I'm installing on a desktop here, so I'm just going to leave that off for now. And that's it. Then run through the installation, copy the files, and complete in a few seconds. Right, so once the application is installed successfully and you're running it for the first time, you'll have the option of either continuing with a demo, The demo is valid for 30 days. I'm thinking, yes, 30 days. If you have purchased a license and you want to register the product, and you'll click on the register button over here, which will then open up the registration screen. So at this point, there's a couple of things that you would need. In the email that you would have received after your purchase of a license, there would have been an order number. There would also be the product level. So in other words, which package you've chosen to run, the amount of licenses, which would be the amount of users, and the registered year that you're purchasing for. So I'm just going to fill out some stuff here. Go with the tax 100, single user, 2020 is fine. And then the order number that you fill in here would be it would be a TB, usually, TB with a 4-digit number. This is important if you're wanting to do the online registration. So I'm just going to demo how that works as well. I'm going to set up a test order on our server, and then I'll show you how the online registration works. So just give me a few seconds to do that. Okay, that is paid. And we're on Company Tax 100. License here 2020. Okay, so I've set up an order that matches these settings, and I'm going to fill in the order number over here. Here's test. And then you just click on the process online registration button over there. And it automatically registers. Okay. If you are having trouble with the online registration, then yeah, just contact us, and one of us, either myself or Matthew, will be able to register the product for you manually. But that online registration is actually quite easy to do. So now that we've got the product registered, we now start it up. Okay. So that's the main interface for our application. Once you've registered for the first time, so we've registered for tax year 2020. So the first time you open the application, it goes straight into that tax year. If you've been using company tax for a few years and the application is now ready to register a second tax year, you do that inside the application itself. So once your initial registration is done and you are able to open the application, under File, under the Company Taxplanner registration option, you'll be able to register further tax years. So we've got tax year 2020 currently registered, and you can see there's the license for 2020. If I'm wanting to register a license for 2021, I'll select it on new year here, and then just say register new license. And then the same process applies basically that you would have done for the initial registration. So once your order has been marked as paid, you can fill it out here and then click on the process online registration, and then it will register the product. So I'm just going to do this one manually and leave it that like that. In my super secret password. Okay, I'm going to register that. Okay, so let me shut this down. So if I've got multiple tax years registered on my application and I start it up, it'll then ask me which tax year do you want to log in as? So I'm going to say 2021, and it goes to the wrong screen. And after the selection, you'll see that it will log you in as 2021. If you are in the application and you're wanting to swap between tax years, just click on the tax year. It will ask you which tax year you want to be selecting. Select that and it will change the tax year for you. And all the financials that's captured for per year will then update to the year that you've selected. Okay, so that would be activating tax years. Okay, so part of the license, if I can just go back to the registration screen here, part of the license capture, you would have been asked how many users you are wanting this license for. And that would essentially means that how many concurrent sessions are you wanting to run for this license. So if you typically have a server with multiple workstations and you're wanting multiple users to connect to the application at the same time, this number would determine how many users you can connect to your application at the same time. It doesn't mean that you can't install the application on a server with a single user. All it means is that only one user will be able to connect at one time. So if you've got the system running on a server and you've only got one license, it doesn't mean that you can't have multiple workstations. You can have multiple workstations, but only one of those workstations will be able to connect at a time. So that's what that number means. So I'm going to upgrade the license to 2 sessions. All right, and register that. Okay, so now my 2020 tax year has got 2 licenses. So I close this down and I start this up for 2020. Too fast. All right, 2020. Just going to the wrong screen. All right, there's my one instance of 2020. And I'm going to start up a second session just to simulate 2 workstations. And it allows me to open 2 sessions concurrently. So there's my 2 sessions of Company Tax 2020. If I should try and start up a third, it'll tell me that your maximum connections has been reached and the number of users that you've licensed for, which is 2. Okay, but you will be able to, because these licenses are per year, you will be able to start up your 2021 application. Right. So I've got 1 session for 2021 because I have a license for that. And I've got 2 sessions for 2022. Okay. Right. I think that pretty much covers the concurrent sessions and the installation process. Let's close all of that. Okay. So version upgrades. So Company Taxplanner, as Rizal mentioned, is a continually evolving suite in order to meet our clients' needs as well as to stay current and relevant. And for this reason, there will always be upgrades throughout the year. So not just the annual legislative changes, there will always be changes or improvements to the system. So there will always be upgrades available. So there's a 2 ways basically that you can upgrade your system. You'd receive a link via email whenever there's an upgrade released. You'll receive an email with a link to download that upgrade. So that process is very much the same as you would have done with your initial install, or you can manually check the version in the application. So the way you do that, let's just go 2020. Let's go to the other screen. Okay. Under the help menu, there's a version release history option, which gives you the history of all the releases that we've had. On that window, there's a little field with the latest version available for download. Okay, so that is currently sitting on 22.01c, and you can compare that version with the version that you currently running, which will be in the top title bar next to the Company Taxplanner title on the title bar on top there. So if the latest version is greater than the current version, then you can click on the download latest version link here, and that will take you through the process of downloading it via your browser, as we discussed with the initial install. And that would be the process of upgrading your system. So it's very much the same as the initial install. It will run through the same process, and it will upgrade to the latest version. So that process is fairly simple. And also the same blocks that we've mentioned before with the upgrade will apply when you're downloading the upgrade file. Also, another thing I'd like to mention is that there are other security measures that you may have to get through to get your application running. Things like your antivirus may be blocking it, so that differs with every antivirus package out there. You'll have to add it in as an exception. Also, your firewall, whether you're running a Windows firewall or your antivirus firewall or your server has got a firewall, those things you'd have to let the application through that, depending on your security settings, to get your application running from there. So those are few of the technical issues that I'd like to cover, or I've shown you now. So I'd like to move on to the functionality of the system. And the first thing there would be capturing entities. So in terms of the interface, on the left, you'll have your list of entities or your list of companies. And we can add companies by clicking on the add button there. There's three buttons on the top there: add, edit, and delete. And if we click add, it will bring up the detail window on the right here. Important to note that the detail window on the right is always relative to the record that you have selected on the left. So I'm just going to capture a few things. On the capture screen, there's very few things that's required. We didn't want to make the application too rigid, that you have to capture a bunch of information just to get going. I know a lot of people just want to capture things quickly. So you can get away with capturing minimal information here. I think the only thing really that's required is the name. So fill in your name. Also important to specify is the tax type, because this will drive the whatever tax engine is going to be applied to the financials that you capture. So under the tax type would be whether it's a company, whether it's an SBC, or whether it's a turnover tax entity. So I'm going to leave it on company for now. Registration number, not required. The end. Okay, whether the entity is active or dormant. If you should select dormant, it will ask you the date that the entity went dormant and also the reason. There's a list of preset reasons there. If your reason is not under one of the presets, you can click other and you can fill in your own reason there. So you're not limited to the presets over here. Okay, the rest all self-explanatory. You can fill out whatever you have and then click on the little green tick there to save the record. So once the record is saved, you'll see that there'll be an entry on the left list box here. And you can have multiples of these. So I'm just going to capture a second one. Just two. See if I save that, and then it'll fill the list on the left here. Just saw a message come through. Can you update the tax type later? Yes, you can. But we'll get to that. These things are not locked in any way. So once it's saved, you can go back in there and edit the values. So I've captured it now, and I can change that to SBC. Okay. Anything else to mention on here? Oh, the save buttons. Okay, so you've got three buttons on this window here. These little stiffy disk, little check mark, and a little cross. So the stiffy disk, that just means save. So what's going to happen is once you've captured your information, you can click on the save button and it will leave the window open. So in other words, I can put something in here, say Alvo, and I can click save. That will save that information into the database, but it will keep the window open. The little tick mark does the same thing. The only difference is it closes the window. So if I fill in some detail here, I click the little tick box, it will save the information, but it will close the window. And then obviously the little X will ignore your change. So if I fill in something there and I click X, that would be canceling your change and closing the window. So it would not have saved that entry that I've just filled in there. Okay, but those things are fairly straightforward. Most of these things are standard behavior. So I'm sure you'll be able to get used to that fairly quickly. I don't think I'm going to go through all these fields here. These things are all self-explanatory. I'd like to jump straight into the financials capture. So capturing financials on an entity, there's a second tab here that you click on. That'll open up the financials screen where you would be capturing your values and your figures and your categories and all of those things. So capturing financials, the simplest way would be to add them manually. So there's an add button over here where you would capture entries. So just to give you a little overview, all your information, all your financials is captured under the data input tab, the first tab on the screen. So here you have your list of entries, right? So if I can just click add and show you what you capture there. The entries on the data input is driven by categories. Let me step one back. These categories are set up on the button on the top here that says categories. So the categories that you see there, these categories are all inspired by the Sars IT14 categories. So these presets that you see here, they are all categories that exist on the IT14. And all of your data input that you would be capturing on this level will be driven by those categories. You can add your own categories if you so wish. If you don't want to use any of the SARS categories, you have your own special category. You can add categories here. So, but you can do that by clicking insert here and giving it a type. So the type would be the type of category. Is it an asset? Is it a liability? Is it an equity? Is it an income, expense, or an adjustment? So you would specify the type of category over here. So I'm just going to make it an income. Say, okay, and then the sort sequence of the category. This determines how the category is sorted on your reports. So if I would say one, for example, then if I'm printing an income report, then this category would be one of the first categories listed. And this is how you would manage your sort order of the categories on your reports. So if I should change this to 100, for example, and there's a bunch of categories before 100, then this one would be at the end of the list. Okay, so I'm just going to make that one for now. And then you have a turnover option here that you can select if it's an income. This determines or the amount taken into account for turnover tax. Okay. This flag determines which categories is going to be taken into account when accumulating that value. So this is specifically for turnover tax. If this category should be included in your turnover, then you would select that or turn that check mark on. Okay, so I'm going to leave it on for now and say okay. So then I'll have another category here called income, or sorry, called this is my own income. And if I go and add an entry here, that category will then be available for me to select on the list of categories. If you don't want to use your own categories and you just want to stick to the SARS ones, then that's fine. You can just select from those ones, but you have the option to create your own categories. So I'm going to just capture one here. Sales. So when capturing entries here, you select the category, as we've just discussed. You give it a description, whatever you want to, the amount, and then also the transaction type, whether it's a credit or a debit to that account that you are capturing for. And then scenarios, we'll get to that in a bit. So that's very simple. Save that. And then that will then enter the value in your data input section over here. I'm just going to capture a few more just so that we can get the feel for it. So I'm going to say this is an expense. Debit, scenario 1. Okay. So once you have a few items captured here and you click on the next tab, income statement, if you've captured income and expenses according to those categories. So if I go to edit this, you'll see that this category is an expense category and that category is an income category. So if I've captured income and expenses and I click on the income statement, you'll see that those entries have been pulled through to the income statement. So I've captured two entries here. One is an income, one is an expense. Obviously, you give them whatever description is applicable and you categorize them to whatever category is applicable. But if there are categories that are income and expenses, then they will get pulled through to the income statement section. And it pulls through as you've captured them. If you've captured them as a credit, it will sit under the credit. If you've captured them as a debit, it will sit under the debit. Okay, and it'll total them for you here and give you a net value based on the income and expenses calculation. In other words, income less expenses. There is also another section here for adjustments, add backs and allowances. And in the same way that you capture the income and expenses, you'll be able to capture adjustments. So if I can just demo that, so I'm going to say, going to add back. Okay, that was under donations. I think I chose the wrong category. Let's go to choose one with an adjustment, and it will stick it in the adjustments column here and apply it where it needs to be applied. Okay. Similarly, if I had to add a balance sheet entry, let's just go with an asset. That won't apply to the income statement, but it will show up on the assets screen. Okay, and similarly, obviously, if you are capturing liabilities and those types of things, it will show up on your balance sheet. The computations tab, that will take into account your net profit according to what you've captured on the income statement, income and expenses. Your net profit is that value there that will get pulled through to the computations tab. and work out the tax dependent on the tax type that you've selected. So I think at this point, it would be good to start speaking about the scenario option on the top here. So if you are capturing information on the input screen here, there's an option to capture different scenarios. Now, this is purely for comparative purposes. So these values that I've just captured here, this was captured under scenario 1. If I change that to scenario 2, you've got an option of 4 scenarios. If I change that to scenario 2, you'll see that this screen disappeared. It means that the screen is now showing scenario 2's information. So if I capture information under scenario 2, for example, now let's say there's an income of 100,000, scenario 2, and I go to the computations tab, it'll show me on the left here the scenario that I've got selected. But I can go and select on the right hand side here, I can go and select scenario 1, and it will show me the detail captured for scenario 1 and show me the comparison between the two. So taxable income for scenario 1 is 100,000. Sorry, for scenario 1 is 1,050,000, and for scenario 2 is 100,000. And you can draw your comparisons with the tax calculations. And you can also change the tax type. So if you want to compare what the difference would be if you changed over to turnover tax, for example, you can then see okay, that's a bad example because turnover tax has got a R1,000,000 limit. So let's change to SBC, for example. It'll then show you the difference in tax between the two scenarios based on what you've captured. So your first one is based on company tax and the second one would be on SBC tax. And if it's the same values, you can see the difference the two tax tables or tax rates would have on your income. So that's a nice feature if you're wanting to do comparisons between values and values that you capture. And you have the option of capturing 4 of these different scenarios. Okay, let's go back to the data input. Change back to scenario 1. What we've currently got, as Rizal mentioned in the beginning, we've got the ability to import from any CSV file, but specifically for this exercise, we can import from the DraftWorks IT14 export. So DraftWorks has an export that they do on their IT14s, and they've now provided a facility for Taxplanner. So they export CSV files for Taxplanner, and you'll be able to import that IT14 via the import functionality here. Now, the import functionality is driven by layouts. And if you go under File and you go to File, Import Layouts, you'll see that the DraftWorks layout is there by default. But if you are using a different accounting package and you have the facility to export from that package to a CSV file, you can actually come in here and set that up, whatever the layout may be, whichever accounting package you're using, and you can set up the CSV file on the layout screen, and then that layout will then be available to you to import on your financials over here. So I've got a test file that's been exported from DraftWorks. I'm going to use, in fact, let me delete these ones. I'm going to import that one. She's sitting under there. Okay, so that's just an import file that we've exported from the DraftWorks application, and I've now imported the information into Company Taxplanner. But you'll notice that once the information is imported, it will lie under a type of uncategorized. So in other words, it's imported the information, but it doesn't know where to place it in terms of the categories that we have in Company Taxplanner. So You can either go in manually, so each one of them, go and edit them and change the category to what it's supposed to be. And this one is vehicles. I think that's an asset, is it? Yes. And you can go in on each of them and select the category, or there's an option here that says categorize. If you click on there, it will show you the categories that you've, or the data input items that you've captured or imported. You can then select them, multi-select. So if you want to select, say, that one, and another income here, interest received, and then select the category that applies to, say, sales turnover, and then categorize them together. So you can do them for all of them. We can go select, see, a bunch of expenses here. There's travel expense. Is other expenses, and then go and categorize them under expenses. Let's just say cost of sales and say categorize. Okay, and then it will categorize all of those items that you selected with the selected category on the top. So yes, you can go and manually change each of them, but the facility does exist for you to categorize them in bulk. In other words, multiple items at the same time. So once you've got your items categorized, the same applies. It applies the items that you've assigned to those categories to the income statement or the balance sheet, and pulls all those things through to your computations. And we've got no profit here. It's a negative profit, so there's no tax applicable. And you can do this per scenario as well. So whatever scenario you've got selected on the top, whatever you do on the bottom here is relative to the scenario that you've got selected on the top here. Okay, so I'm just going to categorize the rest of them. These are also fees. If I get these things wrong, it's because I'm not a financial person. I'm a technician. So if these things go to the wrong place, please forgive me. The dates written off, directors, remuneration, inventory and work in progress. Okay, those looks like balance sheet items. I'm not too sure. I'm just going to put them under expenses. Okay, maybe we should just select a different expense for these things. Okay, and then depreciation. I think that's one option for depreciation in some way. There we go. Is there an option for bad debts? There we go. Long-term loans. Looks like we're doing this one at a time anyway. Current assets. Okay, so I'm just going to stick all of these under a single category. Other assets. And the rest of them I'm just going to stick under liabilities. Look up the figures, but yeah, just to demonstrate how they operate. Liabilities. Okay. So now we've categorized most of the items here, and you'll see that they all have categories now, except for the bottom two, which I'm not too worried about. And you'll see that those items have now been drawn through to the income statement, calculated the net there, through to the balance sheet. and computations obviously based on the values that you've captured there. So just to recap, capturing financials happens on the data input. You click on the add button if you're wanting to add an item manually. Give it a category, description, amount, and whether it's a debit or credit. The scenario that you are capturing this for, this will default to 1, or will default to the scenario that you've got selected on the top here. And then also you can import from an external source, a CSV file, your input entries here. Once you have your input entries captured and categorized, they pull through to the income statement and balance sheet and computations tab. Okay, I think that's about it for capturing financials. I've mentioned the scenarios as well. Okay, then capturing tax and provisionals. So on the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5th tab on the top here, you can capture tax payments and previous assessment details. So for provisional tax, there's a couple of options that you have here to capture. Let me just go through that from the top here. For taxable income, you can select to either use the previous assessment's taxable income value. Now, that value is drawn from the bottom information that you've captured here. So on the bottom of the screen is an area where you can capture previous year data. And that's just a simple capture. The last assessment was done in 2019, and the amount that was assessed there was 200,000. So if I've got that information captured there and I select previous assessment as my option for taxable income, then the taxable income used in the calculation will use that previous assessment value that you've captured on the bottom there. Yeah. So your calculations will then be based on that amount of 2 million. If I say use the current tax year's information, then because my current tax year is a negative value, if I look at computations here, that's a negative value. So the taxable income is 0. That's why you get a 0 there for current tax year. So if I can just change this to be something more appropriate, let's change that turnover to be a positive amount. Income statement should now reflect profit. Look at the computations. There's now tax being calculated on that value. If I go to the tax and I use current tax year, then it will use that value as the taxable income for the purposes of this provisional tax calculation. Okay. If I say use 90% of the tax year, then it will use 90% of the value that's been calculated or from the database. If I say use the lowest of the two, of the previous assessment or 90%, then it will use the lowest of the two values. Or I can specify my own amount. So I can say this is an estimated value, and I'm going to key in my own amount here. 2.5 million. And then it will use that value in my calculations here. Okay, so just to go through the options again, previous assessment uses the previous year data values that you've captured there. Current tax year uses the values that you've captured under your data input. 90% of the tax year uses 90% of the data that you've input. And the lowest of the data that you've input or the previous assessment, it will use the lowest of the two values there. Or you can use an estimated value that you key in here. Okay, so I'm just going to use the current tax year for now. Same for the employee's tax option. You have an option on the bottom here to capture the tax data. So you can key in your employee's tax data here. Let's say 500,000. And the foreign tax as well. It's 25,000. And then for the employee's tax, you can say either use the tax from the database, which would then be that amount, or use an estimated value and you can key in your own amount there. Same for the foreign tax from database or an estimated value. So there's a couple of options that you can use on the provisional capture screen. which will then determine the amounts that gets taken into account on the calculation. So as you can see there, based on the options that I've selected, these are the amounts that it's used to calculate the amount payable for my first provisional. The provisionals are split up into 3 tabs here: first, second, and third provisional. The capture is very much the same, and the same options also on all of them. Okay, once you've selected the options that you want to use and you're happy that the values are correct there, you can then specify the amount that you're actually paying on this provisional. So let's say it's 20,000. And then also if you've submitted the provisional and the date that you've submitted the provisional. And these items are all just for reporting purposes. So the fact that you've selected that you've submitted it here doesn't actually submit the provisional to Sars. It just marks this record as submitted on Taxplanner. In other words, it's you've submitted the provisional to Sars on your own, and you are now updating the status of this provisional in Taxplanner. We are going to include an interface to Sars in a future version. I can't say exactly when that will be available, but that is in development. We are going to be interfacing directly with Sars as we are currently doing with our individual software for the IT12s. We will also be doing an interface for the IT14s in Company Taxplanner as well. Okay, but for now, this is just a flag to indicate that it's marked as submitted. Okay, then there's a few reports that you can draw depending on which provisional it is that you've captured. This little summary on the side here, this is a summary of all the provisionals that you've captured. So not just the first one. First, second, and third is done on the tabs here. This little summary screen is a summary of what you've captured for all 3 of them. Okay, so this will always be a summarized screen or totals of all the values that you've captured for these provisional items here. Okay, so just to show you what the provisional report looks like. Okay, very basic, gives you an indication of the provisionals that's being captured. It's 0 because I did not click the save button on the top here. So once you've captured your information, remember to click the save button so that it can save it to the database. And then you'll have the value show up on your report. So until you've clicked save, the values that you've entered here is just on the screen. So until you've clicked save, these values will not pull through to your reports. So just very important to note that that save button must be clicked before anything shows up on your report. Just go back there. And that's just a simple report to show you what you've captured for your provisionals and the amount payable on this first provisional. Okay, I'm just going to do the second one just so you can see what that looks like. Options are all the same. Okay, and then the amount that you've paid on that provisional. Save. And it will show you for the second provisional the values that you've captured there, and it will also bring through the amount that you've paid on the first provisional. So it'll take that into account. And the same will apply for the final or third provisional. And that is essentially how you capture and draw reports on your provisional tax payments. Yeah, and then the last option on the screen here is reports. There's a few reports that we have available for you. The tax report basically just shows you your income and expenses and the taxable income based on that, and the tax rate dependent on what you've selected that entity to be, whether it's a company or the SPC or a turnover tax entity. It will then show you how it gets to the tax liability based on that. Okay, very straightforward. Oh, this little logo on the top of the report here, that is selectable. So under the file option on the top menu, if you go to system settings, there's an option there where you can select an image file, which will then pull through to that report image. So if I go and select a different image, do I have a different image somewhere? Let's go. Should have one in here. And then you'll see the image has changed to a different image. So just a little customization on the reports there. Income statement, also very similar, shows you the income and expenses and the taxable income below. Balance sheet shows you the assets and liabilities and equity entries that you've captured. And in company listing, that just shows you the list of companies that you've captured in your system. So in other words, the amount of companies that you have and whether you've submitted the provisionals for them or not and their status. So that's more of a control report. And then you have the data input report, and that is what you've captured. These reports obviously all relative to the scenario that you've got selected. So if I should draw the data input report, then it would be relative to the scenario 1. Gives you a couple of options here. What do you want to show on this report? Do you want to see the assets, the liabilities, the income, expenses, and adjustments? You just want to see the income and expenses. You can take the others off. It will show you the income and expenses. If you want to add them all in, just say assets and liabilities. It'll show you the assets and liabilities. Yeah, so options that you have here shows you what you've captured. Just go see, I think I've only got one adjustment. Yeah, two of them. Okay. So that's also a handy report to see, just to compare with what you've captured. And the filters there gives you the option to show only per category what you've captured. Okay, and that's essentially the reports. Is there anything else I need to mention? Let's just have a look here. I think that pretty much covers my story. Yeah, I think I'm going to pass you back to Rosal for her closing statements, and then I think we can go into a QA after that. So, Rosal, the floor is yours again.
Thank you, Rizal. I just wanted to ask you, can you perhaps just quickly show us how to copy data from one financial year to another? Is that possible?
Sorry, I just lost you there. My mic was on mute. As I was saying, the financials are captured per year, all right? But the company entries, they stay static. So your company entries are not per year. So if I change to a second year, it doesn't change the list of companies that I have. It only changes the financials. So there isn't really a copy function from one year to the next. We can build that in for the financials, but as I said, the company values, they remain static for all the years that you've got licensed. So at the moment we don't have a copy function for the financials, but that is something that we can build in if it's required.
All right. No, thank you. I think now with this whole DraftWorks export, I suppose it would be best to export the previous year's data into 2021 or into the next financial year, and then just update the figures. I think that should be quite useful now that we've got that. Then there's no double capturing, really.
Yeah.
I see there's a question
Let me,
how to set up the layouts for import.
okay.
I think we could perhaps give Louise personal support here,
Yes,
or is
yes.
it something,
Yeah, I
yeah,
think the setting up of the layouts is quite technical.
tricky? Mm,
It's yeah, yeah. No, it's not really that difficult, but it's a little bit technical. So in other words, you
mm,
need to know, is it a CSV file? Is it an ASCII file? Is it a comma separated file? Is it semicolon separated? That type of information. So if you look at the file itself, so if I can open up that test file that I have. Let me just find it quickly. Okay, so this is the test file that's been exported from DraftWorks. If you edit that file in a text editor, not in Excel, in a text editor, you'll see the layout of the file. You'll see that it has a header and it has values in the file that's separated by a comma. All right. So if I show you what the layout looks like for DraftWorks here, it's very simple. It uses two of the fields in the file. It's set to the description field. So in other words, position 2 in the ASCII file. Where is the ASCII file? Position 2, not position 2, field number 2 is the description. So field number 2 is the description. Field number 3 is the amount. So if I go back to the ASCII file, field number 3 is the amount. And that is how you would set up your layout. So yes, it's a little bit technical, and if you're needing assistance, I think we should deal with that on a individual basis.
mm.
Okay.
Cool. But Louise is saying that it makes sense now, so
Okay.
maybe
Cool.
Louise is more techno
Tech
savvy in
savvy.
a sense.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Then Natalie also asked, do the financials show the previous year's comparative figures? I doubt that.
Not
Is
sure
that
what you
not
mean. The previous year? No,
when
no,
you
no. Oh,
export? Oh.
the report at the moment is for the current year only.
Mm,
But because we have the information in the same database, we are going to be developing reports where you can draw comparative between the years. Because we don't have separate applications for each tax year, we have all of this information in the same database. So we will be, yeah, having reports where you can compare between years.
mm, okay. Does that make sense, Natalie? To answer your questions? Not really, because you want the comparative figures. Yeah. Okay. There's somebody else typing. I just want to see if there's any more questions. Oh, thanks. It's just thank yous coming through. Thank you so much.
Okay.
Okay, cool.
No
There's
other
no questions.
questions?
I think the presentation was pretty self-explanatory, and like we said, company tax is not as complex as the
As the
individual
individual.
taxes,
Correct.
and the software is really very basic. There's nothing complicated about the use of it. Yes, sure, there's a little bit of capturing involved, but with the extra features that you have to, monitor the provisional taxes, where you can print out a report, and then you can work from that report whose provisional taxes are still due. I think that's a really nice feature. Also, the dates that you can put in. So yeah, there's quite a lot of features that the software offers. Great webinar. Thank you so much, Louise. Thank you for
Happy
supporting
to.
us. I do want to, I'm not going to do a 5-minute break. I think everybody, can we
Can
not
we
use
not
the
use a
category?
category if the spreadsheet has billions of transactions? Can we not?
Yeah, it is.
To do it manually can be time spending. Okay. I think that's one of the reasons why we introduced the bulk categorization. We can use the import if there is some sort of link between your external data, if you are importing, and the categories that we have in company tax, then we can build something to link the two. So in other words, when you import the two, it goes directly to the category. But at the moment, we don't have any specific links between any external information, which is the reason why we brought in this bulk categorization where you can multiple select items. I know it's still quite a bit of a schlep to do because you still have to tag each of them, but it kind of simplifies the process of categorizing these things. Okay.
Okay, well, that Amanda is saying that would be ideal. So there's something to ponder
So
on.
I think depending on what financial software you're using or where you're wanting to import from, we can maybe set something up specific to that system, because we have the functionality to create imports.
To import from a CSV. Yeah. Okay. Cool.
SAP.
SAP.
Okay.
She's saying SAP.
Okay, cool.
Okay, maybe it's something to look at. Maybe we could liaise with Amanda, maybe to give us a template, and so that we can play around with it.
Example file we can set up.
Or SysPro, yeah, not bad,
anything.
not bad.
As long as it has the ability to export to a CSV, then we can import.
Yes, yes. So Amanda, we'll be in touch with you. If you can help us with this, that would be super. Okay. Anything else, ladies and gentlemen? Nothing. All right. Wait. Okay, very good. Thank you. Okay. All right. So, guys, just obviously being the business development manager, I do want to just say a few words on exit. What sets us apart is that the Company Taxplanner is a really easy program to use, and it is more affordable compared to other similar products out there. Our clients receive support from real humans, as you can see, and we're very cute. And our turnaround time is immediate to 24 hours, and it's more likely the former. So we are also constantly improving our software, and as you could see with the interaction with the delegates, that if you ask us for something, we're more than happy to check it out and see if we can't make a way for you or to make your lives easier, especially when it comes to capturing. I know how we hate that. So we also consider our clients' needs above all else, and should we, like I said, receive a request from you for a change or an enhancement, we will definitely look at it. It's not like we're going to say, oh, no, we're not going to do that. So really do send us your recommendations, especially the people that have been working with the software, and also the new people that will work with the software. We also need new insights. And then obviously our service is personal, and a majority of our clients have been with us from the beginning of time. So once we have a client or we gain a client, we keep them. So just from our side, we strive to give exemplary service. So yeah, thank you very much for taking the time to spend your afternoon with us. You will be receiving the Company Taxplanner manual, and we will also send you a recording of this video. This video will also be available on YouTube. We will put it on our website, and also future clients that buy the software from us, we will send you the support video in any case with your purchase. So thank you very much, everybody. Nothing else for us. Someone is typing. Thank you. Everybody start just saying thank you. Thank you so much. Cool. All right. I'm going to say goodbye from me and the Taxbox team. We'll catch you at the next one. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.